In these lectures, we're going to review substance-related and other addictive disorders. Now, the important thing to note is that throughout human history and across virtually every culture, substances, particularly in the form of alcohol, have been not only celebrated, but also revered. So across cultures, we see multiple images of gods, tavern keepers, of white barley, of dancing and merrymaking, of alcohol, and the Sumerian god of brewing. However, although substances have been a celebrated key aspect of human socialization for millennia, they have not always been thought about in the same way. So keep in mind that smoking was once an approved and also encouraged social norm in the US, with not only babies endorsing it, but doctors recommending it as well. However, nowadays smoking is condemned, at least by large swaths of the US population. And that's not just the case for cigarettes. Even in the last century alone, a variety of drugs that were endorsed for their restorative properties are now condemned, and in many ways, demonized. And these changes that we see in conceptualizations of substance use are based on a variety of factors. Certainly, scientific evidence that has documented the physiological harm caused by substances has played a role, but so too have changes in social and cultural norms, time, and also capitalism. And these last three pieces, social and cultural factors, time, and capitalism, are what play a huge role in the formation of stigma. Now, this is certainly not the first time we've talked about stigma in this class, but it's especially relevant when we're talking about substance abuse and other addictive disorders, because this category of disorders is exceptionally misunderstood and also stigmatized in our society. And part of the reason for that is because of how substance abuse disorders have typically been understood. Overall, there have been two predominant historical theories about substance use disorders. Disease theories, which suggest that addiction is caused by physiological deficits, and theories that suggest addiction is the result of moral failure. Thankfully, over time, we've learned that neither of these theories is ultimately correct. Instead, current conceptualizations about the causes of substance disorders capture just how complex these types of disorders are, involving a variety of factors. So we're going to go through these different pieces step by step. First is the biological piece. And what research has suggested is that both genetics and neurological factors do play a role in substance use disorders. In particular, as it relates to genetics, 30 to 60% of the variability in substance disorders may be attributable to genetics, though this varies depending upon the type of substance. In terms of neurological factors, research has shown that repeated exposure to psychoactive substances may actually change brain structure and function, transforming voluntary behaviors, or drug use, into compulsive behaviors. The theory is that this occurs because the brain adapts to higher level of neurotransmitters that are caused by the substances. Next are environmental factors. And what we know is that a host of environmental factors likely contribute to substance use, including things such as the family context in which one is raised, peer influences, community attitudes, and also experienced stress. Next, there's a host of ways in which the substance itself contributes to whether or not someone ultimately becomes addicted. In particular, there are 4 factors that are thought to be especially influential: the route of administration, the effect of the drug, when the person starts using the substance, and also whether that substance is widely available. So let's break this down a bit. First, in terms of the route of administration, research has shown that routes that deliver the substance to the brain more quickly increase the risk of dependence. So injecting, snorting, or smoking a substance will result in a quicker dependence than swallowing the substance as a result of how long it takes orally administered substances to enter the bloodstream. In addition, research has also demonstrated that substance use is much more likely to occur if the substance is particularly potent and/or if the substance creates more subjectively positive effects. And that subjective part is really important because what some people perceive as positive effects might not be the same thing that everyone perceives as positive effects. In terms of early use, we know that individuals who start using substances at younger ages are much more likely, more than 5 times as likely, to develop dependence than are individuals who start using substances at an older age. Now, this graph is specifically for alcohol dependence, but the same is also true for other substances as well. that the younger you start, the more likely you are to develop a dependence. Finally, research has also shown that substance use is also affected by how available substances are, which makes sense. So substances that are more affordable and more readily available are more likely to lead to substance use. The next piece of the puzzle concerns learning. And what research has shown is that 3 different types of learning all play a role in substance use: social learning, operant conditioning, and classical conditioning. In terms of social learning, we know that substance use and substance use behaviors can be learned by observing others use substances in order to cope. So if you grow up in a family where substances are used for that purpose, then you're more likely to do the same. Research has also pointed to operant conditioning as a contributing factor in substance use. So if you remember, operant conditioning is learning via consequences. So consequences that increase the frequency of a behavior are called reinforcers, and consequences that decrease the frequency of a behavior are called punishers. What research has suggested is that the positive physiological reactions caused by substances end up being reinforcing, thereby encouraging future drug use. That one's pretty straightforward. Finally, classical conditioning has also been implicated in substance use. Classical conditioning, if you recall, is when stimuli become paired together, causing a previously neutral stimuli to elicit a conditioned response. In terms of substance use, research has shown that certain settings become paired with substance use, causing the body to anticipate the substance. And this is actually one of the more interesting and also problematic pieces of substance use, which is often pointed to in explaining why people sometimes overdose, even on lesser amounts than they've used before. The idea is that if you typically use in a particular setting, let's say in your car, then your car, a previously neutral stimuli, ends up causing your body to anticipate the substance. So over time, you end up building up a tolerance that's unique to that setting. So in that way, the car becomes a conditioned stimuli, causing the conditioned response of your body's physiological anticipation of the substance. However, if you change the setting, then your body won't have that automatic anticipatory response. So you can end up overdosing, even with lesser amounts of the substance. When you put all those pieces together, you end up with substance use or abuse. So we'll stop there for this part of the online lecture. In the next part, we'll talk about substance-related disorders.